Hi, I live in a small town in Vermont, and we undergo all sorts of strains and growth pains, I guess you could say. And in trying to work through some of those, I just reflected on some observations, and they are strictly sort of my own. How does one make a good town? So I'd been to Norway and parts of Switzerland, and then just like many of you, roam around Vermont. There are particular places in Norway, depending on geographic, climatic, population scarcity, where the farms have been shaped in very interesting ways. So I was looking at farms, and they collect themselves as public spaces for animals, as public spaces for human beings. And just the shapes of those farms and how they accrued over time, and the kinds of forms that they came to be responding to that topography. This always goes much faster than one would think, that 20 seconds, but I wish I was Harry Bliss right now, actually. The craftsmanship, that's another factor I think that one notices. The farmers as artisans, I mean, the climate, I think, although adverse, helps in many ways to sort of spend the winters making things with great care, and I found that observable. Around the 10th century, Christianity came to Norway, and with all these farms scattered about, one also found churches in very prominent public ways. These still exist today. I mean, they're very, very beautiful. They're usually set in some isolation. It's not like we do here in Vermont where we place these buildings in the middle of our communities, but they are both religious structures and structures where one meets others. Then we moved to a small province in Switzerland. It's called Graubünden. It's in the northeastern portion. I spent quite a bit of time visiting some small villages. One Vrinn, another Vals. And here is where you can really begin to appreciate the kind of custom of cordoning. It's almost as if one took a belt and cinched it around where people would live, and it was inviolate to move beyond that line. This is Vrinn. You see a sort of a blow up on the right-hand side. You see the pasture land. It's topographically challenged. The little blips you see are mostly shepherds' huts, places for sheep and goats. The village itself is very randomly configured. It's definitely a product of its topography. And you can see there's a reverence for the landscape. That seems to be a circumstance that one finds in these kinds of places. You see some of the shepherding huts up on the hill and the kind of cacophony of the village down below. There were maybe 400 or 500 people that lived in this village. It was also this concept of, it's kind of like the family doctor. This town had a village architect, and he made the slaughterhouse in the upper portion. He dealt with all the necessities in this particular community, modern day character, a mill shop down below, and much like the Norwegian farmer in the wintertime, the kind of craftsmanship and artisan work and the pride that was taken in that work. This is just a small pedestrian bridge across a gorge on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is the elementary school gym. The truss was one of the most beautiful things I think I've ever seen. The architects are standing down there. The same reverence for the landscape that one finds in Norway and one finds here in Vermont. This is a small forestry station, and you found these scattered throughout Switzerland, made again with great care, a contemporary building, but again announcing the importance of our natural resources and the attention that we pay to those resources. And much like the Norwegians, it's almost as if that landscape is neutral territory, or in some ways it's that realm that exists between the spiritual and where we actually live. And one could find scattered through the landscape small chapels, usually beautifully built buildings, not accessible by car oftentimes, just parked in the middle of the landscape. Then bring those two places here, and one can really see strong parallels, I think, between where we live and some of these, again, cold climates, topographically challenged, sparsely populated. I think we had a little more of the fear of the wild when we first settled here in the 1600s. But our villages and towns respond in much the same way, very affected by topography and natural features. This is Stratford, 1792, the Stratford Meeting Hall, one of the more beautiful buildings in the state of Vermont. You see the settlement pattern. I think some of you may have heard big house, back house, little house, barn, and then really extending out into the agrarian landscape. Richmond, a similar configuration, a broader valley, complicated perhaps by a larger stream and now an interstate. The village tends to splash about a little bit more, still linear in configuration, still the same sort of reverence for, you know, people collecting, meeting, and paying attention to how those buildings are made. Again, that, you know, tradition of craft, artisanship, you know, how we make beautiful things, whether it's the granite products of Barry, or even the decoration and the, this is now a pedestrian bridge up in, I think it's not Alberg, but public space, outdoor public space. This is Chelsea, the courthouse. It's one of the few communities in Vermont that has a pair of green. But that notion of communal space, also how we move about. I showed you the bridge in Switzerland. You know, the Swanton Railway Bridge, I think on the lower here, probably the longest covered railway bridge in the United States. The Ticonderoga that's parked at the Shelburne Museum. We revere these places, or revere these methods of moving about. So, again, just my observations. This is the Rockingham Meeting House. Very much a symbol of our state in many ways, and how we collect ourselves together as people. Again, nothing profound, just things that I see. So thank you.